Maplestory 2 is an online RPG that seems like a splice of My Sims and Dragon Quest, but without the turn-based combat. It's a little bit of a strange sounding combination, but whatever floats your boat, I guess. You start off by picking a class of fighter and designing and naming them. Once you've picked a questionable hairdo for them, you can then learn the basic controls and start off the main story. Every role has a different starting story. I've only tried 4 so far, and none of them have been the same. The stories, however, all seem to converge at the same point, and regardless of which class you choose, you end up following the same storyline, so it doesn't get too complicated. Every role starts off with 4 basic attacks, 1 standard and 3 more special, one of those 3 being some kind of dash attack. After following a bit of the story, you're then left free to roam the world and show everyone what you can do with your oversized sword. To engage in a fight, you just run up to enemies and start slashing away, or you just run past them when you get bored of fighting tree stumps. Areas can have bosses stumped right in the middle of them, and if you're a curious sort like myself, you can end up running into them unwittingly and getting your skull smashed off with a bludgeon. The area enemies level up quite fast, and if you don't, you can end up getting overwhelmed by the small enemies without even realising it. The story bosses aren't too disproportioned, and if you figure out their attacks, you don't really have too much to worry about. However, some non-story bosses are much more difficult than others, and definitely require at least 3 or 4 players to make any progress on. The first boss I met had about 8,000 HP as far as I remember, and whilst he was a little tricky, he wasn't too bad. However, in one of the later plays, I was advertised that a boss had arrived. I went to check it out, and it turned out this great flying rotisserie chicken had 800,000 health. That doesn't sound like much maybe, but bearing in mind I was about level 28 and had 1000 HP myself, and level 50 is considered mastery level, I think that puts things into a little bit more perspective. As you level up, you can face harder bosses, and the game actually has a directory of recommended bosses for you to fight in your level range. If you click on a boss, it will actually tell you where and when in real time it will next spawn. Some have half an hour delays on them and things like that. So if I was playing the game and it was 9 PM, the game might tell me that the monster next spawns at 9:10. This gives players enough time to get to the right place at the right time if they fancy the fight. The game alerts you anyway when a big boss spawns that's in your level range, giving you a good chance to get in there and get a big fight under your belt. The combat mechanic works off stamina and spirit. You consume spirit when you use magic or status effect attacks, as far as I'm aware, such as poison bombs. Stamina affects physical moves. Some classes use a mix of both. Some classes need more of one than the other. The limited bars for each mean that you can't just stand there and use moves over and over. You have to wait for some spirit or stamina to regenerate before you can use those moves again. You also have a cooldown on some of your attacks, like your dash attack, to stop you whizzing around the map like a maniac. The boss fights are mostly done on arenas or particular parts of ground that segregate them from the rest of the map, meaning you're less likely to run into minor enemies when fighting them. This is mostly for the bigger enemies, but some bosses do include minor enemies in their fights, and these minor enemies repeatedly respawn. Even after the boss is dead, they hang around, so you have to make sure that you don't. Later in the game, it advertises that you can actually use macros to set keys to chain sets of attacks. Of course, this will use up the required amount of stamina or spirit, but can probably be very helpful for when you need that killer combo. The main thing with the game is it has a lot of content. Not only are there mechanisms for buying or looting better weapons and armour, but you can enchant items too, get a variety of potions, buy mounts and cars and even planes to get you around in. You can have pets that follow you, and when you get to level 50, you can tame monsters to become your pets. There are crafting mechanisms and home designs too, and the ability to buy real estate for yourself on the map. You can also reserve public billboards and display an image of your choosing for everyone else to see. You can play music, farm, mine for ores to make upgrades, go fishing and level up all your life skills to get rewards. Really, there is just so much to the game. You gain attribute points to up certain stats, and the game tells you which stats are more desirable for your character. You get skill points to improve your attacks and give you new ones past the original 4. You can also earn chests by levelling up, which give you clothes and health items. And you earn trophies by exploring areas and defeating enemies. There is also a quest area of the game that allows you to explore dungeons of different varieties. Some are task-based, some focus on finding treasure, and some are enemy-based, just to name a few. Some you have to be a specific level or higher to participate in, but for some, if you are a high level, you have your attributes stunted so that the dungeon is still a challenge. There are also high level dungeons that record your time and points and have rankings for the people that complete them. And that's just the single player stuff. As mentioned, the game is actually online, and other players from your region will be running around your map as you follow the story mission. You can join them temporarily to fight bosses or complete story missions, then they can run away and you can never see them again. Alternatively, you can join as a party for the dungeon missions. You can do these alone, but you have a choice, and you can join or create a guild to play the game with others. Some guilds set requirements, some will let anyone in. It's kind of a weird thing to get your head around, because the other people can be following the same storyline as you, and you can't see their progress, but you could end up helping each other fight the same enemy. It's a very strange interaction, but once you get your head around it, it's not too bad. I don't really know what the benefit of being in a guild is, because whilst the game pushes you to join one, it doesn't actually advertise any benefits, which you'd think it would if there actually were any. The music is decent, and the important characters are voice acted quite well mostly, giving a bit more depth to the story. I'm not sure how much the original story characters come into it later on, but you find yourself getting swept up with how big the world is and forgetting about the story sometimes. I have seen the starting NPCs from the Wizard storyline pop up later in my Thief playthrough, so presumably there is a point where you see the story start characters again, potentially for every role. The game map is huge. The areas themselves don't seem that big sometimes, but there are loads of them. Luckily, the game provides you with taxi stops where you can travel one place to another without finding the move warp, so it saves you a bit of time running across the map. And the mounts that you can buy or earn help with crossing the map a bit faster. There is also a helicopter system that can instantly transport you to another bit of the map, but you need a radio to summon it, and you can only earn those as you level up and progress through the story, so at first you just have to stick to running. You have main quests and you also have side quests that earn you a bit of extra experience by taking out some specific enemies or finding items. These are entirely optional and you can ignore them all you want. The thing with some of these is that the respawns and resets for enemies and interactive parts is actually quite fast. So you can kill an enemy, wait 10 seconds and then kill the same enemy again. You could run around to the other locations on the map where the enemies are, or you can just wait and save yourself time and effort. It's a bit of a weird way to do it, but it saved energy for me, so I guess I can't complain. The game also, like My Sims, has a fishing minigame where you can catch fish for some reason. You can probably sell them, but who knows, really? Your fishing ability has a skill level, apparently, and you can only fish in specific places until you make it better. Again, I have no idea what for, but yeah, fishing. Same goes for mining, and herding, and farming, and enchanting, and interior decorating. The game provides you with a guide where it talks you through how to function each little activity, which is quite good, and it also gives you a starter for each of the activities, so you get a free fishing rod and a free chicken and stuff. Unfortunately, these tutorials don't unlock until the higher levels too, so at the lower grades I just had to watch curiously as people I saw fished and flew across the map, and a whole load of other stuff that I had no idea how to do. This type of thing just makes the game feel really overwhelming at the start, but once you get the hang of it you can engage a bit better with the world and the other people in it. Unfortunately, getting the hang of it doesn't tend to happen until about level 26. You can dye your character's clothes and get cosmetic outfits only for display on your character. What I mean by that is that you can earn an item in a boss fight with increased defense and swap it out onto your character, but their visual outfit won't change, even if the new item is a different colour or shape. You can also give your character a title, which you earn from getting trophies. My title, as you can see in this video, is Revenant Reaper, which I won by completing this boss that I don't actually think I was meant to fight at that point because I was too low level. But it happened and it's a cool name, so I'm keeping it. You can choose not to have one, but it's up to you. Mentioning minigames, you also randomly can be in the middle of a fight when you'll get an invitation to a minigame pop up in the corner. No one specifically invites you to these, they just appear, and then when you choose which of the 2 offered minigames you'd like to join, you get joined in with loads of other players online to play it. You can ignore the pop-up and not play, but these are basically free opportunities to get bonus experience for your character. And if you're like me and dying in the middle of a fight, it's a chance to tap out, do something stupid, and then tap back in with full health. The games I've seen so far are the Maplestory quiz, which is a true or false quiz, which can have any statement from dogs have 6 legs to whatever the hell this question right here is supposed to be. There's a dance competition called Dance Dance Stop, where you jam out and then have to claim a spot with a certain amount of other people on it and defend the spot. If there are too many of you than the allocated number or not enough, or you don't find a space, you lose the round. Survive 5 rounds and you win. There's Crazy Runners, where you have to race across a series of gorges and bits intent on slowing you down as you fight to reach the finish line before the time runs out. Another one, called Trap Master, involves you being placed on a podium of squares, and you have to try not to fall off it as each round the squares fall away in a specific pattern, and you have to figure out which block will fall next so you don't fall with it. This one was hard because it was hard to actually see myself amongst the mass of other players. Ludibrium Escape is one where you have to race to the top of a series of moving blocks and platforms, and I have discovered that I am garbage at this one. Spring Beach is similar to Trap Master, but instead of falling squares, the squares shake, and if you don't move off them, you get launched off the platform. There seems to be no rhyme or reason as to when these minigames pop up, so you just take the chance if you want it, I guess. The game puts you back where you were after it's done, or you leave, so you can just pick up where you left off and carry on with the story. It's a bizarre way of putting it in, but I guess it sort of works. It's better than being randomly sent off to a challenge dungeon, I suppose. The music that I mentioned earlier, or maybe I didn't, I can't really remember, can be played at any part of any map pretty much, other than boss fights. This leads to some great times, like when I climbed up to the top of the palace. I couldn't even see who was playing it, but I was just having a meander around. Then I was treated to a piano version of, well... I also later on moved on to a piece of map where someone had also gone ham on the piano and was playing music from Initial D. Again, this time I don't actually know if someone was playing it or if it was actually the soundtrack, but who cares? Memes. Overall, the game is absolutely stacked full of who knows what, and to be honest, it's a little overwhelming to try and understand it all. It's a bit of a shame it's all online because you can get booted halfway through a story if your internet is shocking, and a lot of the stuff you can do could actually just be done offline. The only things you really need online for are the minigames and the party dungeon quests, really. The acting is fairly good for those few characters important enough to deserve it, and the art is quite decent. The characters don't have massive variety in appearance sometimes, and your own playable character doesn't have too many customization options, but it's passable and the music's fairly good too. For the rest of the game, the combat is good, bosses require some skill to defeat, people can't get ridiculously overpowered too fast, and you have to play it right instead of just being able to wade through everything. The fast respawn of enemies can sometimes be a bit of a hindrance if you're backtracking, you have to wade through everything again, especially if they're stronger enemies. In the beginning there's not much action and a lot of talking, but these things tend to pass a bit into the background as you get into the main content of the game and what it has to offer. The game does have to handle a lot of info, however, and sometimes this can lead to a few visual glitches, such as character customization simply vanishing into thin air. This also means that every time I close the game, I get a perma black screen and have to shut it down with Task Manager. That may be the fault of my own internet or my laptop, so I won't penalise it too much on those grounds. I will penalise it a little bit though for the main content of the game mostly being piffle. There's a lot of combat, granted, but about 40% of the game time burned is on travel time and learning all the random side stuff like music and fishing, and as mentioned before, you sort of end up forgetting why you're there. Obviously doing all the side stuff helps up your level, which makes the main fights easier, but it doesn't make them that much easier for it to seem really worth it. And a few times I've just sort of wondered why I'm wasting my time on all that stuff. Arguably, it's not too much of a downfall that there's plenty to do in it, and everything is relatively well explained and tidy, even if the game struggles to hold its own holes sometimes. I really couldn't ask much more from a free-to-play. Taking all of those things into consideration, I'll give Maplestory 2 an 8 out of 10.